all of the Asia Pacific affiliates, all of our sections together, and we wanted to talk about life after the pandemic. So the reality is transport workers, seafarers have kept the world's economy moving throughout the pandemic. And many seafarers and many transport workers want to receive their just reward for keeping our societies going. So we discussed global supply chain, we discussed occupational health and safety, we discussed the future of young workers and platform workers, we discussed how do we make sure that workers understand the green economy and the changing energy fuels are issues which workers must have a say about. But we also, perhaps most importantly, identify that Asia Pacific is the most unique, diverse, multicultural region in the ITF family. And we need to do much more to share best practice, to build a very strong platform. And in these very complicated political times, being part of a trade union is the most important bit. Being a member of a union that will protect you and ensure you have a good job is critical.
The most important that we have to remember when it comes to seafarers?
Well, I think there was a couple of things when it comes to seafarers. We have to be in a position to learn the lessons from the pandemic. We need to ensure there's a global system when it comes to issuing visas. We need to make sure that they're treated as essential workers when it comes to prioritising the vaccine. And if we have other challenges, we have to learn and we have to make sure governments and big business knows the world doesn't move without ships, and ships will not move without seafarers.
What's the most challenging of taking out of the pandemic or post-pandemic?
I think across all of our sections, perhaps civil aviation, which was really downsized, lots of good people lost their jobs. The biggest challenge is to upscale and make sure that we have people that are qualified, that know how civil aviation works. It doesn't matter whether you're ground control, check-in, cabin crew, or a pilot, or even air traffic control. You need to be professionals. It's a highly regulated environment, and it's critical that they have good union protection, but real professionals who know their business. Yes. Well, we recognise across all of our modes of transport, we don't have enough women in transportation. And it's one of those issues that we plan to work with the multinational corporations to ensure that we make transport a place where women feel comfortable coming to work. We need to change how it works. We have some very successful Filipino captains that came out of our union AMSA, and they are operating on some of the most sophisticated ships in the world, tankers and cruise ships. So it's critical, utterly critical, that we make space for women, we encourage women, and we give them the opportunity to join the seafaring family.
You mentioned about bridge.
So the reality is the changing, for us in the ITF, it took a little bit of a while to understand that the climate change is going to mean that our jobs change. And what does that mean? It means that we're going to have different skills. We will be dealing with different diesel oil in the engine room, and we may need new skills. First position for the ITF is to make sure the seafarers and their unions are at the table when we discuss what those fuels are. And then we can discuss the risks, occupational health and safety, but also what education do we need, what skills do we need. Will it be hydrogen? Will it be ammonia? We don't know the answers yet, but the reality is we have to have highly skilled professionals, well educated, providing a safe and secure place to carry cargoes.
Particularly for Asians.
So I think certainly for me and the ITF family, our relationship with Dr. Oka and AMASUP is incredibly special. It's the biggest seafarers union in the world, biggest seafarers democratic union in the world, and first from Captain Oka with his vision about how he built a strong union with good collective bargaining agreements and social and welfare, medical attention, provident fund. It's an example to others. And since Dr. Conrad took over, he's established it, he's widened it across the provinces, he's given more opportunities, and yet he remains a humble, decent man, but he is globally respected. It doesn't matter whether you're a Japanese ship owner, a Japanese union, an American ship owner, American union leader or any other of the Global South leaders that were here this week. He's well respected and well loved.
The seafarers don't want to be locked up on their ships anymore. They've been a victim of the pandemic. They have been shut away from many of the protections that our communities seek with COVID and the pandemic, out of sight, out of mind. Many of them even abandoned in overseas ports, can't get home, can't get off their ships for months and in some times years. They're a hidden workforce from the public eye, but they're an essential workforce. So we're making sure that the ship owners meet their responsibilities to them, but also the governments from the countries they came from, here in the Philippines, very important labour supply, but also the countries they go to, that they're not treated like, external threats to the community standards of health and safety. They are integral to those communities' ability to be able to fend off the pandemic and to live lives. They should be respected, properly respected and acknowledged, and unfortunately they're not.
Can you say now that we are now in a post-pandemic era?
Well, not really. I mean, we're dealing with the pandemic in a different way, and sure, the vaccination levels are higher, so there isn't the same day-to-day impact, but the long-term trends are still very worrying. There's a high degree of continuing COVID cases, particularly for the elderly. The mortality rate is very, very high. If you're in isolation as a seafarer, for example, you're a long way from hospital and medical support. So no, I think it's changing, and I think public attitude is changing, but the reality is it remains just as large a threat, albeit we're dealing with it in a different way.
What is ITF working now with regards to MLC 2006?
The MLC, the Maritime Labour Convention. Well, it's port state control, and it's as effective as the countries that the ships go to. If the countries haven't got a proper inspectorate, if they don't thoroughly investigate the complaints, if there's intimidation against the crew not to make any complaints, if the government itself hasn't got a budget to properly prosecute the intent of the MLC, well then nothing happens. So it's not a magic wand in itself. It's dependent upon all the stakeholders, the flag state, the port state, meeting their obligations, the ship owner, meeting their obligations to that workforce to enact not just the intent but the spirit of intent, that this is an international workforce, many of them that are beyond regulation or not like a domestic workforce, haven't got the legislative and regulatory support, and so rely on the port state to deliver. And places like Australia, the country where I came from, had a government that was negligent and would not put the money, and in fact wound back the inspectorate. Fortunately, we've had a change in government, and with that came a change in attitude. Shipping is essential to the Australian economic and national good, so you need to protect that and not neglect it. But it's hard, and again, that's the importance of the ITF and the regional, these regional meetings, to be able to continue to identify the issues. It's a reputational risk for ship owners that don't meet their obligations, and it's a moral lapse for governments that don't enter into the spirit of which they signed the MLC in the first. So we've got a long way to go in an industry that had been running on exploitation and neglect for so long, and old habits die hard. So yes, there's been improvement. Have we reached a standard that every worker would normally expect in a national working environment? No, we've got a long way to go.
Ini れました。そして、コンラッドさん、最後に一言。
Such a pleasure having you, and we hope that you go home safely and talk about the Philippines nicely. And also, when Steve first approached me, if we could, they could hold a conference here in the Philippines, in Manila, I said, do I have any choice? So anyway, thank you very much for coming. I hope that you enjoyed your stay. You are welcome anytime to come to the Philippines. I hope you enjoyed your stay in my hotel, where you can check in for free, but when you leave, you have to pay. Thank you very much.